and Economic Development grant for Northampton County's Emergency Shelter Grant funding. Can you give a little history and background as far as?
No, but Lori can. So I'm going to hand off to Lori.
Good afternoon, and thank you for having me here. This is one of those grants traditionally that, because it's administered through the state's DCED and through our office, we traditionally would take this to the Economic Development Committee meeting. Because of the time frame that we're working under here, Ross was kind enough to suggest that I attend this here, and thank you for having me bring this here. What I'm bringing to you is we have a 2009 grant that will be expiring in September of this year. We have received annual allocations of emergency shelter grant dollars since 2007. This particular project was $7,500 of the approximately $52,000 grant. It was designated for Turning Point of Lehigh Valley. The emergency shelter grant program administratively at the state tends to run very long. Typically, we will apply for it and not find out if we got it for a year. The project they had submitted it for was an emergency renovation project, and it had to be done before that time frame. So by the time we were able to provide the grant to them, they had done the work. Therefore, we could not show that they had bid it competitively within the contract period. We had to disqualify that project. The state had suggested that they submit for an alternate type of project. This would be for their Northampton County shelter, which is in the city of Bethlehem. And again, Turning Point of Lehigh Valley is a domestic violence shelter serving Northampton and Lehigh counties. They have gone through 2 different directors within the past year. They've had a bit of an administrative struggle there. In March, they brought in Diane Zanetti, their new executive director, who I've been actively communicating with. She did provide a list of needs that they have in terms of shelter renovation to keep their facility open, the most pressing of which was for mold remediation in their basement. They do have storage in that area. They brought in and had a contractor provide them an estimate. They need to do remediation, have improved dehumidification, and did I say that word right? Dehumidifying, and then have new drainage outside the building installed so that it takes water away from the foundation rather than toward it. So those costs, they came in for an estimate of slightly over $7,500. The state would agree to continue giving them $7,500 for this project. It would need to be submitted in June to give them time to spend this money before the grant ends. So that's what I've prepared for you today.
Have we ever had a history of doing repairs on facilities like this? I mean, has there been, this is not setting a precedence. I mean, there is precedence already set.
Yeah, this grant, the Emergency Shelter Grant Program, actually, this current year's, the 2010 projects we have will be the 2011 projects we'll be bringing to council next month, will be geared solely towards renovation of existing shelter facilities. That was one of the primary uses in the federal legislation. The state almost exclusively awarded funds for that purpose. In the new budget that just recently passed, the federal budget, they now are making some changes. They'll call it the Emergency Solutions Grant, not the Shelter Grant, and they'll change up a little bit of the priority areas under it. But the projects almost exclusively have been renovations. The other projects that we funded with this specific grant, we provided funding to New Bethany Ministries. They helped them with some insurance costs, some security camera improvements. We also provided money to Third Street Alliance to do a kitchen rehab project.
I mean, in the paper, I see other shelters that seem to be more prevalent as far as raising their concerns about finances and the lack of money. I'm just wondering how this was chosen above others, or are we trying to help everybody and this just happens to be on the table right now?
The way this program works is the county must be the applicant. What I would do is when the announcement comes out from the state, I notify all of the shelters serving Northampton County that they have an opportunity to submit a proposal. I don't make a decision whether or not they can apply. I agree to submit on their behalf. So the one criteria is we have to rank those proposals. The state may or may not agree with our ranking, and they make a decision then which projects will or will not get funded within the county's application. Some years we've had 7 or 8 different projects funded for 5 or 6 different shelters. In this particular year, they only funded 3 of our shelter programs. We have, and specifically, Mr. Marcus and I were just talking about the safe harbor situation, and we know that there certainly are pressing needs. All of our shelters right now certainly could utilize additional operations dollars. At this point, the state's given us every indication they really want to focus on renovation and rehab under the existing guidelines of the program. So that's why we focused on that right now, and what we will focus on in our next application going in next month. After that, I think that you'll see a much heavier focus on services and operations.
Okay. Thank you. Does anybody have a question about this? Okay. Is there a motion to recommend to council tonight? I wonder if we have a quorum here. I'm on committee, you're on committee.
Good.
We're good.
I'll move it.
Call for the vote. Aye. Real easy.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
May I ask, while you're here, a separate question? The recent story, I'm not sure which paper had it, it was the Morning Call, about the waiting list for public housing. I know you're involved in that aspect of Northampton County. Can you give us maybe a snapshot of where we are, what kind of waiting lists we have, what kind of needs exist as far as housing and how you've approached it?
Well, there's two different things I can mention in that regard. Yes, I am the county's appointed rep on the Northampton County Housing Authority, and I'm involved to a degree with Easton and Bethlehem's Housing Authority. There are several hundred people on the waiting list for each of those housing authorities. I know specifically Northampton County Housing Authority has a waiting list. They will continue. I know one of the housing authorities, I believe it was Allentown's reference in that article, had an 8-year waiting list. Another one said they refuse to take names because they don't want to give people false hope. I know Colleen Altamore, the director at Northampton County, does continue to put people on the waiting list. They, on occasion, what will happen is you'll get notification from HUD all of a sudden one day that you are now getting funds. You have to continue to lease up a certain amount of units, or your funding the following year will be reduced. But if you lease people up, there's no guarantee you'll continue to get rental money to get them. It's a really broken system. It's frustrating, I can say on her behalf. Most of the people who, let's say for Section 8 or within the public housing units themselves get selected have to be at what's considered 30% or below of the area's median income. For a family of 4, I believe that is about $30,000 or less. So again, you have to be of pretty much what they consider extremely low income in order to even get in. I know, right now we think we're going to be okay in terms of being able to provide some additional vouchers this current year. There was some question we were exploring a few months ago, the possibility of having to terminate people who are currently in Section 8 housing out of the program based on some of the federal proposals that were being pitched. So it's an ongoing need. I don't think that we'll be able to meet the need. The second thing is I know the Federal Reserve does have a person named Erin Mirzwa who grew up in the Lehigh Valley, now works in the Philly office, who does rental and income studies every year. She recently presented one again and updated for Lehigh and Northampton County. We are relatively okay in terms of units. We actually have a slight, an over-availability of units for people who are at what are considered 80% of the area median income and above. So there's more units available based on what those people can afford. When you get to the 50% or 30%, it's very disproportionate. We just don't have enough units available at the price people can afford in that price range. We're seeing we've served approximately 800 people so far with the Homeless Prevention Rapid Rehousing Rental Assistance Program we got through the stimulus dollars. That money will expire. Grants will end somewhere between September and December. We'll run out of money. And, I know Mr. Stofatate forwarded a name to me, someone looking for rental assistance. What's she going to do? Has no place to go. So, at that point, we'll have much more limited resources.
So if you could wave a magic wand, what do you think could be done to improve the system, either here in Northampton County or regionally?
Give people more money.
Well, and that's it. We need more jobs. We need more consistency. I'll tell you the one thing that, from the administrator's perspective and the shelters in the housing authorities, everything's always so up in the air. There's no reliable indicator. You're always sort of at the mercy of these very bureaucratic systems. I can tell you that I've commented more than once that HUD administers most housing programs, and I wouldn't even want to venture a guess at what their administrative budget is because they are the most bureaucratically heavy, extremely involved entity. I've administered Department of Justice funds and all sorts of other federal agencies that had nowhere near the amount of oversight and bureaucracy you get with HUD. You probably could house another 1 million people a year if you just got rid of that. So I think we need to be concerned about the cuts that they're proposing to some of these funding sources that are being dubbed as welfare, because I think what we're going to start to see are people who are have been sort of off limits. People who are disabled, people who are elderly, they're going to start losing their housing vouchers or any chance of getting into public housing pretty soon. And that's at least, what we're hearing from the directors of the Housing Authority in the Lehigh Valley. There are no short-term solutions. I know. John will ask me that several times. How do we solve this? That's a great question.
The amount of money is enormous. It's just not a matter of more money. It's a matter of lots.
Mm-hmm.
And I know the way they're selected sometimes, too. It seems like there's a lot of turnover because I don't even know the word to use, but people were more stable families, they could stay. There wouldn't be the turnover. They could choose the more stability with the
I would agree. I mean, the model HUD's going to is what they call housing first, where instead of sticking people in shelters without too much in the way of case management, they're really trying to focus on like with our homeless prevention model, get them into a unit that is safe, clean, sanitary, and have them do intensive case management, job placement, help them find units, and try and give them a chance to succeed and get some job skills and things of that nature, rather than throw them into a place, give them rent for a few months, and hope that they make do with it. I'm surprised at the number of people who give up their vouchers every year in the housing program, and I know the director in Northampton County attributes a lot of that to people have decided to make a change in a relationship, and they give up their voucher to go move with the love of their life or things of that nature, and then they become unstable again in a relatively short period of time because they haven't made a change that will increase their economic independence.
But Peg, when you think about it, 40, 50 years ago, we would have 3 generations living in the same house.
Mm-hmm.
Right, exactly.
Common, acceptable, grandparents helping raise kids, etc. Our Graysdale was an almshouse, was a home for the poor. It became a nursing home. Somebody got kicked in the head by a horse. I mean, they would end up at Graysdale to live. So, I mean, sometimes we make decisions that end up backfiring.
Yeah,
And,
it's true.
I mean, who wants to have their grandparents? Some people do, most people don't, like our privacy. So, in some ways, we are our own worst enemy.
I'm amazed at the number of houses in my township, for example, that have mother-in-law, or they call them in-law quarters. They've added on a living arrangement. I'm amazed at how many.
We tried in this county 30 years ago to get something called eco housing.
I remember that.
Remember that?
with
Literally
Gladys
cottage housing
Farm.
opportunity. And there were only 2 or 3 that I ever knew that happened, and they were wonderful. They bring in this pre-modulated unit, attach it to your house, knock in the doorway,
Right.
put it up in 3 days. You can have your mother-in-law, your father-in-law live with you. They have their own privacy. They would eat with you, go back, watch TV, go to bed, check on them. But you have to go through zoning to get a temporary zoning, permit for that. And most places were really tough on that. It never took off. Wonderful concept.
But I'll tell you, I can just go right up our street and there's these big McMansions around that are going up, and how many of them have in-law quarters?
Well, I'm going to take away from Ross's Graysdale time here 1 second. But again, in terms of the home buyer stuff, I mean, again, a lot of this focuses on rental, but that is one thing we're working with the Planning Commission on actively is affordable housing zoning. And one of the things that continues to be a challenge is when you have kind of, 2 acre per build zoning within a township. And again, it's a stress on the infrastructure, but again, it discourages affordability in housing. You also have some townships where we're identifying things. I know one particular in Lehigh County where you're allowed to have the mother-in-law suite on 1 acre parcel. You're just not allowed to have separate kitchen or bath facilities in there. So that's a way around really allowing, density, so to speak.
They're worried about it turning into another rental unit.
Correct. So yeah, so those are some of the challenges we're trying to deal with in terms of home buyers and affordability.
I told my kids it's about time I move in, let them take care and support me.
But we're an urban community where they let you in. I guess.
Yeah, which township are you in?
Not in God's country up where you are.
I don't know, my son's living with me at the moment.
Is there any other questions?
Thank you.
All right,
Okay.
thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Mr. Marcus.
Before we do Graysdale, if you don't mind, on the agenda for tonight is the resolution that you asked me to prepare, and it was submitted to Frank, and I just want to make sure that everyone here is comfortable with it. Yes, it's the last page.
For reimbursement,
So if you want to just look that over, if you have any questions, so that you don't have to go into it in detail tonight.
The biggest packet.
HSDF fund.
Yes. The only thing that I did not put on here, and you may want to add, it's up to you, is the Graysdale reimbursement rate. And I left it off intentionally because of this was written before Tuesday's vote. But now that the vote has been taken, you may want to add that to oppose the reduction in county nursing home rates.
Frank, do you have the verbiage for that, just in case, or we can come up with one?
No,
real quick?
I can do it. I mean,
Okay.
I just can go down and I can hand it to you before the meeting. I can draft it in a minute or two downstairs.
Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Marcus.
Sure. And then if you want, Frank, I'll take care of it, changing it on the actual resolution so that all you have to do is just recopy it onto the top part and it'll be good to go. No? All right.
You can just type it up and then we can amend it while we're doing
Type it up.
it. He's going to type it up and then,
I can't put it on that paper because I don't know where it is, but I will put it on regular paper and we'll fix it up for tomorrow.
Right.
Yeah.
That's what I meant.
Yeah.
Yeah.
it's like, tonight it'll be a Post-it note. Okay.
No, it'll look fine for tonight.
Thank you. As far as the discussion and review of Graysdale-related issues,
But are you okay with?
yes, we're
this?
okay.
Okay.
I'm
All right.
sorry. I didn't, does anybody have a question about tonight's resolution, even with the proposed amendment or changes from Mr. Marcus?
All right. Then the only other thing on the budget, I didn't know if you wanted to, this is something you may have received through CCAP on your own, but this is a highlight and a comparison between the House Republican
Amendment to
amendment
Corbett.
compared to the governor's. It's 2 pages, so it's real brief. This is what I was referring to yesterday, Mr. Cusick, that at the same time that the House Republicans restored the money for
HSDF.
the HSDF and also for county nursing home reimbursements, the 2%, they then turned around and took away about 2% from additional from CYF. And then there's some also, I think, some small reductions to MH and what used to be called mental retardation, intellectual
Developmental
disabilities.
programs.
Yeah, that's what we call it, but the more popular term now is intellectual disabilities. Disabilities, ID, the term of the day.
This is a proposed budget. Does it explain how it's going to be broken up and how it's going to affect maybe Northampton County?
It doesn't take it to the county level, but it does talk about it as a statewide. And it's essentially what I just reviewed with you. It does not do anything to aging, and it doesn't do anything further to drug and alcohol. Those two were left alone other than the Act 152 cuts in drug and alcohol, which is also referenced in your resolution.
Well, it looks like it established HFDF to the proposed 2010-2011 amount, however, minus about, it looks like about 12%.
15, yeah.
15.
Yeah.
Would that be reflected as far as right down to our level?
Yes.
15% we can calculate for.
At least, yes.
So I know this is about worth the paper it's printed on as far as the information, because anything can change in Harrisburg. But have we made it anticipate maybe at least getting 85% of what was funding that, because it was originally zero.
Right.
Because I know you, like you stated before, you use this as far as plugging the holes in the budget, as far as trying to help people and move with what the current needs are.
Right.
Anticipating this, I'm trying to figure this out. It would be of a benefit, but how much does it affect us as far as what we can help and who we can't help?
The biggest direct impact it has on us is on the categoricals when they are running low on money. As you know, this year aging is in bad shape. So we have taken some money that we did not need for some anticipated projects that were supposed to be funded out of HSDF and moved those over to aging. So that helped lessen the impact of those cuts that we talked about a few months ago. Who will need it next year? I don't know. I'm assuming aging will continue to need it because I don't really see anything on the horizon to help aging out of its predicament. But that's not to say something isn't going to happen in child welfare, mental health, drug and alcohol, that might even take precedent over aging.
How about as far as the effects on the public-run nursing homes under the Republican and proposed budget?
They restored the 2%.
So we're looking at a 0% change.
Right. So,
Okay.
but that's over the governor's budget. That restores $725,000 for Graysdale. It's no small amount of money because so much of Graysdale's budget is Medicaid.
Yeah, and I think if I were a state representative from this county, I would be waving this thing up and down after
Absolutely.
today's vote.
You would think.
Thank you for this information.
Sure.
Anybody else have questions?
That's good, campaign.
Now, if you want, now if you want, we can move on to the elephant in the room.
We can ignore the elephant. We can just consider time is of essence.
Okay.
Kind of move into council meetings later.
Okay.
Okay, so the discussion and review of Graysdale-related issues.
Essentially, we appear to be on target to release the RFP tomorrow to meet our goal, assuming I'm able to get my part finished.
I've had several nursing home operators that I've either contacted or they've contacted me since they've read about this whole thing in the paper, and I assume that some of them have already inquired. Will they have to re-inquire, or will they get the RFP?
Those that
already
followed Kathy's suggestion and entered their information on the county system will receive it automatically.
Okay.
So if you talk to anyone, any consultants or operators who are interested, please encourage them to contact purchasing. There's a set system that they have for people to register with their office, and if they follow it, there will be an automatic notice.
Okay.
In addition, there will be notices issued across the country. Anyone who is registered anywhere around the country in the bigger system will also receive excuse me, an email saying it's available.
Yeah, most of the contacts I've had have been with managers or operators of county homes in Pennsylvania or that are involved with CCAP's programs in nursing home operations.
I saw the list the other day of those who have registered so far, and I know Kathy did reference that one of them was referred to her by you. So,
The nice thing about the system, I forgot what it was called, public procurement system. I can't remember what it was, but what it is that even people who have not voiced an interest in Graysdale, if they are in that line of work and they
Yes.
are registered in this system, or similar work where it can be cross-referenced, they receive a notification that there is something of interest for them to look at. So
Yeah.
even if for some reason people have lived under a rock for the last several months and don't know anything about Graysdale, this will obviously send an email under the rock so that they would find out.
yeah.
Tom, there is substantial interest out there from interested parties to operate Graysdale, from the conversations and emails and calls that I've gotten from current operators. So I don't think that there'll be a lack of qualified applicants.
I think we're going to be pretty well surprised at how many people might be very well accessing the information once it becomes public.
It's called Public Purchase Platform.
Thank you.
And evidently, when you sign up for this, you enter certain, your business is given a code by the type of business it is. And this email will go out to anyone with the code of that is closest to a nursing home administrator. So, rather than just going through what we've already discussed at yesterday's committee and what you already have, let me just answer your questions. You have the schedule, the anticipated schedule, and please, let's put some emphasis on the word anticipated. It could go a little quicker, it could go a little slower. This is our goal.
Okay. Just wondering, we did talk, it was anticipated, just like I'm surprised you don't have bold letters across the top or anything as a disclaimer. Okay. Just, well, we have two council liaisons representatives here for the RFP committee. It is moving forward. It's probably more than 90% done as far as the last time we spoke about it. I'm sure it's much closer now. But now we have a schedule as far as times and dates. We've also have anticipated when it's going to come before council, and that's in the second meeting of county council in August. We're actually going to be combining the finance committee meeting and the human services committee to try to expedite this and try to bring to two different facets of finances and as well as the human services side, and try to address it all in one big meeting as much as possible, hopefully to invite the public, because sometimes they can make one but not the other, but very much it'll be an open forum. It's a little aggressive in the sense that we have the holiday season right there in the month of July, but it does seem to come conveyed from the administration that they will be able to move forward and be able to deliver it to us in this anticipated schedule.
Yeah, we're confident we can do it.
Does anybody have any questions?
Not on the schedule.
Some of the issues that you've been in contact with some of the management companies, the thing that comes to mind is a lot of us have tried to identify how to hold people to. Everybody says that if we sell it, no one would be able to provide oversight. Now we're looking at maintaining ownership. How do we provide oversight as well as maybe set up benchmarks? Has anybody been invited or been offered or solicited as far as how certain members of these companies could very well meet those requirements? Because right now this is the first time this county is going out for a management team, and we're trying to follow examples of previous counties that have done so.
Yeah, I think what I know is that other counties that employ management companies have routine and regular meetings, both with the administration and with members of their boards of commissioners, or in this case, a council member. So my suggestion would be that once they're brought on board, that as part of this committee's duties, that as you go through departments, that you put Graysdale as quarterly or regular part of your committee agenda, and the operator would appear, and I think that should be part of their contract as we employ them, and that they answer questions, and we'd get their quarterly balance sheets and provide oversight that we do over anything else as part of the committee system that we have.
As far as the first part of it, when Steve McShane was the interim administrator and he was done through an outside contract, I met with him, I can't even remember now, it was either weekly or bi-weekly basis, and we had a standing meeting. And I'm assuming something similar would happen under the new contract.
This is kind of a broad topic, so very much if there's any concerns that are kind of related to Graysdale, feel free to throw them out there. I'm not sure if Mr. Marcus has any concerns of council from the administrative side as far as how we're looking forward to planning out the rest of the year fiscally, as well as trying to create as many opportunities for you guys to be successful.
That is an important point. Regardless of what you decide to do with increasing the county contribution for the rest of the fiscal year, we still need an amendment, because right now we're only authorized to spend, I think it's $35 million for the course of the year. That's not going to take us through the calendar year. So we still need an increase in budget authority, regardless of what you do with the county contribution. So please, if you decide to be to maintain your position that no additional county contribution, at least pass the necessary legislation to increase our budget authority. Otherwise, we're cooked.
Yeah, very good point, because our budget's the budget, and we kind of anticipated you'd be only spending so much money, and not all of that is the county contribution. That's the Medicaid, Medicare reimbursements, the private payers rate.
90% of it is not county contribution.
Yeah. So that money still has to be authorized.
Exactly.
You don't have permission to go forward after a certain dollar amount. Everybody was talking about the 6-month thing that was anticipated. However, what is kind of written in stone is the dollar amounts. That dollar amount will be reached, of course. We are in the 5th month of this year, so it's going to be necessary as far as moving forward.
Ross, I talked to Duran about that. He has a different opinion. I mean, we need to talk to Duran about that, but when I talked to Duran, he thinks we're funded to the end of the year with the budget, but just under the allocation of the county that he gave us.
That's what I was saying.
But I mean, we could still go into September, October.
No, we're going to run out of money before then.
No, I don't think so.
Okay.
I don't think so.
I think that's one of the things we need to find out.
Yeah.
I think there's been confusion on the part of council, debate inside council, debate inside, I think, with all of us. And what we really need to know is, where are we against budget right now? How far we think $35 million will take us? And not that we're going to play brinksmanship, but I think we need to know that. And beyond that, I think council has to decide, are we capping it at $3 million? Are we going to say to the new administrator, ease you, and the big issue is 2012? I think we've got to be reasonable the way we approach this.
Well, the $3 million is the county contribution. There's been a couple different sides. One, that the administration has the authority to continue collecting fees, continue collecting reimbursement rates through the year, because it's still a facility that's in operation, and since it requires no tax dollars, they can administrate and operate in its entirety. Just as much as we use the wireless funds in 911, you don't come here for every little thing. It's something outside of the local tax dollars, so they can do that. That's one side that I've heard. The other argument is that it's a significant amount of money, and it always comes to council because it's part of the budgeting process. So the worst case, to err on the side of caution, and would be that presented before council, and that's not the county contribution. That's not the $3 million. That's everything beyond that.
Oh, I know that. My suggestion, I think we need to, that's why I said I think we need a to date and a sense of when that $30 or $35 million will run out, as well as some determination as to whether or not it's conceivable they will do it without a contribution beyond the $3 million from council.
And I
County.
guess it would be legal to get updates on union negotiations to see if anything's happening there.
We could always ask during an executive session if there was a meeting.
Basically, we're assembling a team right now to do that, so.
And I think the other issue just for us, and we talked about this yesterday, and I've got to talk about it, hits my mind, otherwise it's gone, and that is a discussion that council would conduct a hearing or a meeting with the Pennsylvania delegation or Lehigh Valley delegation to Harrisburg to discuss, first of all, the inequity in the allocation of Medicaid assistance to county homes vis-a-vis for-profit homes. Secondly, to raise to them, I think, the whole sense of the importance of the human services budget.
It's a
I
very
think that
good
was
point.
generally thought of yesterday as something we wanted to do, so
Trying to schedule a fall plan on doing that. We talked about that in the previous.
And, yes,
And that was human services in general, everything, not just Graysdale. This was
Right.
before the primary, so Graysdale probably wasn't included in that discussion.
but I think the issue that was discussed yesterday simply was to say that also the Graysdale
Now it's an
disparity of
additional-
reimbursement
Right.
is critical.
Right. We had talked about doing that in the fall, thinking that summer was a difficult time to gather all the legislators.
I'm just saying, since we talked about doing it informally, it might be well for us to do it by vote.
Okay. Mr. Cusick, you had your hand up?
Yeah, one of the things that I wanted to point out here, and maybe it's another elephant in the room, is I think almost every member of this council has agreed that there need to be some sort of union concessions in order to make Graysdale work again. And I think if we were to increase the county contribution back to that $6 million, what kind of a signal would we be sending to the executive and to the bargaining units as to whether or not we're truly serious here? I think that, and I've always, I've been one of the few people here that every year has questioned the Graysdale budget, and Ross, you've been through my questioning. And I think what we have the opportunity to do here, while we hold the line at this $3 million, is to tell the bargaining units and to tell the executive that we're serious, that we believe that these cuts, these concessions need to be made in order for us to turn Graysdale around and make it work. And I'm not comfortable writing another $3 million check to continue to have things go the way that they are. And I've always said one part of this was management, the other part is labor, and then the third is us here. And I think that, and for me, I think we need to send a signal that $3 million is our goal, and we want the executive, we want the unions to sit down and make that happen. And then next year, we want it to get closer to break even as best we can.
But I think I have no reservations about your goal. I mean, I do believe that is part of the equation, no question. But whatever contract is struck, whatever agreement is struck with AFSCME and steelworkers will not take effect until 2012. They have a contract through 2011. And so my concern is that the one issue really doesn't impact the other. The message I think you should be sending is, and we should be sending, is in the drafting of the 2012 budget, because that's where it really impacts those negotiations. And we can draft a budget that shows less cost to the county in fringe benefits and that sort of thing. And they can see where, that we are determined to make it happen. And I think that's a more appropriate way. I'm just concerned that there are so many unknowns, and we don't, like I said, we don't have to deal with the $3 million part right away. We can wait till there's a state budget. And then we have to resolve the issue Mr. Stofa brought up of when exactly we need to increase the budget authority. That's the bigger issue to me for the 2011 budget, is the budget authority to at least get through the year with the 90% of the budget that's not county contribution.
And again, I have no problem with the part that's not county contract. I've never had a problem with that. My
understand,
issue, I mean, and I've been consistent since I've been here. Unlike some people that are blowing, in all directions. I've always said that the goal needs to be the county contribution should be as little as possible. I understand there's some swings from year to year, but every year when I bring it up, I get all kinds of answers, and I think now we're at a point where I think that this body needs to send that message that that's what we believe should be done. And from some of the advocates against the sale, they continually made this argument that in the past, Graysdale has made a profit, it's returned money to the county, and I've never cared if money came back to the county. I've always said that the contribution side is where we have to hold the line and require that Graysdale be run efficiently, effectively, and not pull a number out of thin air each budget and say, well, this is what we expect as a county contribution, and then we get our audited statement at the end of the year, and it's something completely different than what we had budgeted, and we make 2 or 3 budget amendments during the year. That's never taken into account.
You're right.
At the very least, the administration up there, midway through the year, through the past 5.5 years I've been here, could have come to us and said, well, we're not going to need a $7 million contribution. We're not going to need a $5 million contribution. We expect it to be smaller. That never happens. And my hope is that when new management comes in, that things change. That if the budget midway through the year or after a quarter, things look differently, that we get new numbers, that we get that reflected as part of a budget amendment. To my recollection, I don't recall in the 5 years and 20 budget amendments that I've seen that's been reflected, other than for maybe if there was a change in the state contribution or a bond issue. But that contribution number needs to continually be monitored, and we need to receive a budget amendment if and when that's going to change, so we don't get these wild swings. I forget what the variance number that Mr. McClure quoted to us at one point, the projected losses versus the reality. We can't operate it that way anymore.
You're right. It's a fair criticism. But if we can go back to an earlier point, I think it's a worthy goal that Graysdale should do everything possible to break even. But I will just remind you that the current track record of the counties that I've checked into does not bear that out. And that a lot of people have used Lehigh County as an example. Others have used Bucks. Both of those require county contribution. So I would hope that I just don't want to set up whatever company we choose. I don't want to set them up for failure from the get-go by saying you're expected to balance the budget without any kind of contribution. It's a worthy goal, but just understand it's going to be a tough goal, very tough.
Ross, is it in the numbers or whatever? Because Jim Coley ran, well, he's lieutenant governor now, but he was lieutenant governor, but he was a commissioner in Bucks County, and he told me, he said, Peg, we're doing okay. We came out with a small profit this last year, he said, but it's very small. But is it all in how they keep the books and what they do with their numbers, or bury it somewhere else, maybe? I'm sorry, Ross.
That's right. Go ahead.
I'm sorry.
Peg, I called them. I'll give you the guy's name. He said they put $1.5 million into their nursing home.
Okay.
It is. I mean, you need to call them.
Right.
We have the documents downstairs.
Okay. Okay.
And for both for 2011 and 2010. For 2011, they were anticipating a deficit. For 2010, they had a deficit. Now maybe prior years.
Right. I don't know.
And what really was, when you say why is that? Remember, in 2006. The reimbursement rates for county nursing homes were frozen, and that's when the disparity between county and private nursing homes started.
I have to do more research because...
And that's where the gap started. And then on top of that, don't forget, we decided to pay for 2 large capital projects with cash. We didn't finance them, and those showed up in the deficit. The window project and the chiller project were both done with cash, and that contributed greatly to the operating deficit. Now, that doesn't impact this year, but in the prior couple of years, it does show up.
But I just know, and I'm sure you're doing this, when you're in your contract negotiations, you just do everything possible to make them understand that this isn't going to work without that give back with it, to bring the benefits more in line with everyone else. I mean, if they're 68%, even if we bring them down to 50 or 48, I mean, they're still way ahead of the others. And I don't know how you can get that we don't have to go to arbitration, and
Well, they
I'd
aren't.
love to circumvent arbitration somehow.
Well, they don't have access to arbitration. So
Binding. They don't have access to binding arbitration.
Who
I think
does?
They always have access to arbitration.
Well, okay, right.
Except for residual doesn't at all.
Who? Why?
Residual
You mean
has, I
AFSCME
think, just
doesn't?
fact-finding measures. AFSCME has...
Court-related really has access to binding
Yeah.
arbitration.
Oh, okay.
It's only
See,
the
I
non-
don't know this labor
Yeah, it's
law
non-
stuff.
It's the service providers who cannot strike because they need to provide the services. This is the mandatory.
Right,
The
okay.
prisoner, the correction officers, I mix that up. The correction officers, some of the court services, they have
Okay.
binding arbitration, so
Okay.
they don't strike, and we're required to pay them a certain fees.
Because I think
Services.
that vote on I still think that vote on Tuesday said the people are willing to give a little, but not unless the union gives a lot. That's my reading.
Mr. Marcus, is there anything else? No. Anybody else have questions for Mr. Marcus, who's always been great at these Human Services Committee meetings? Always a welcome guest.
Yeah, I had one, it relates to the Veterans Affairs retirement. Has the process begun?
we are putting
Fill
together.
that slot?
It has not formally begun. We're looking at job descriptions and that sort of thing right now, and we will be getting ready to post the position soon.
Oh, internally first, and then?
Yeah, we have to do that.
Internally?
Yes.
When is,
He gave us 3 months' notice, so we
Wow.
have time. Yeah, he's a very decent fellow. He really is. He's a gentleman, and he's been an absolute pleasure to work with.
Anybody else? And once again, I'd like to thank Mr. Marcus.
Sure. My pleasure.
Thank you.
thank you.
Thank you.
And Mr. Dietrich, you're going to serve on that committee, right,
Which committee?
for the new Veterans Director?
I haven't seen anything come across yet. Did the email come out?
Talk to you about that, John?
Yeah, Mr. Stofa had brought it up. I've pretty much CC'd you on every veterans things. Maybe I didn't get an email, but you would agree to serve? I think
Consider me
you're
interested, of course.
well qualified to do that.
The difficulty is I've known the position as far as what the people who he affects, and to be able to meet the standards of what's been expected over the last couple of years is probably going to be hard to get someone to fill the shoes. So that's a big job and a tough task right there. But consider myself interested, please.
Right.
But
Anybody else? We'll adjourn the meeting. Thank you.
Thank you.